let's talk about the early Week 8 waiver wire, starting with Josh Downs, 36% rostered. I imagine, based on what happens the rest of the day, but I think he's going to be the highest type of guy to bid on, most fab type of guy that you're going to want here. 5 catches, 6 targets, 125 yards, and the score. He's now in games with Gardner Minshew as his primary quarterback. 7.7, then 13.7, then 15.7, 13.1, and then bam, 23.5 points. All very, very solid days compared to 6 and 5.4 days when he had Anthony Richardson. So this is a trend that's only gotten better and better. He has over a 25% target rate in the games he plays with Gardner Minshew compared to just 12.9% target rate with Anthony Richardson. So obviously with Richardson down for the year now, it is a good news for Josh Downs here. Other than him, I do think Darrell Henderson does warrant that top of the waiver wire priority list here. If you need a running back more, maybe you prioritize him even over Josh Downs, should they both be out there for you. Only 24% rostered here for Darrell Henderson. Definitely led the way there with 18 of the 31 carries there. Royce Freeman, though, as well, 29% rostered. He was presumed to be the starter today. It was Henderson who took the first snaps, got the most action here, had the catch in the receiving game as well. But both these guys were involved, as you mentioned earlier, all but 1 carry of the 30 total carries, 12 for Freeman, 18 for Henderson. So you've got to prioritize Henderson. And that's what I predicted. I wrote an article about it and it ended up coming true here. I said everyone's going to scramble to get Henderson. Zach Evans was the talk of the day, and ultimately he did nothing. I do want to just toss out Myles Gaskin because Henderson, even though he got all the work and Freeman got a decent amount himself, neither of them are impressive players. And Freeman, Henderson in particular, looked slow, looked like he was running in mud. I do like Gaskin as a player. He's nothing crazy special either, but that goes to show you how banged up this room is. I actually think he could be the best talent here. They talked about that he'll be elevated next week, probably. I could see him throwing a big wrench into this. So before you go and blow all your money to get Henderson, and especially if both of those guys, Freeman and Henderson, are gone, but you want to maybe take a little upside stab, Gaskin in much deeper leagues is out there in all but 1% of your leagues. So check for him. Other than them, and if you don't need the immediate plug and play, I really like Singletary. We talked about him on my waiver wire show last Tuesday. He was actually top 3 on my waiver wire list, and he is still just 14% rostered. My guess is because it's bye weeks, they were on bye, and you really just don't have a ton of bench space at this point. But I think a lot of people overlooking the fact that Singletary actually outsnapped Dameon Pierce last week, 52% of snaps compared to just 35% for Pierce. He had more routes, 50% of the routes for Singletary, 23% for Pierce. More rush yards, 58 for Singletary, just 34 for Dameon Pierce, and 4.8 yards per carry for Devin Singletary, 2.6 for Dameon Pierce. So in every single aspect, Devin Singletary outplayed, outsnapped, outtouched. He was the lead back, and the coach after said, Bobby Sloak, their offensive coordinator, mentioning Pierce just hasn't got it going, doesn't seem like the perfect fit for this outside wide zone game we're doing. Singletary, I don't know if it's the best fit for it either, but clearly performing better than him. And this is an offense that's exceeding expectation, top 10 in total points and overall yards per game. I think Singletary could end up emerging as the number 1 back in this offense. And at this point in the fantasy stage, he could be a nice running back too, actually, moving forward, if that ends up being the case. So definitely something to monitor moving forward. Pierce has just been so awful all year. So Singletary, very much intriguing, out there in a ton of leagues. So definitely something to watch. Mecole Hardman, 16% rostered. Just wanted to remind you guys, though, the upside this kid has from weeks 5 to 9 last year. 12 fantasy points, 13.2 fantasy points, 28 fantasy points, 19.9 points. Then he got hurt. Never heard from the rest of the season. He got hurt the rest of the year there. But for that span, that 4-week span, he was the wide receiver 9 in fantasy, surrounded by like the Jamar Chases and A.J. Browns of the world. And then it was Mecole Hardman at 9. What is he doing on a list of these guys? So he does have that type of upside. You look at this wide receiver core, sure, Rashee Rice, at 58% roster. If he's out there, he's definitely the number 1 receiver you want on this team. But who else does he have to beat out at this point? He had a couple glimpses on a punt return today. Seemed explosive, seems happy to be back there. Mahomes certainly was raving about having him back here. So he hasn't done anything yet. That's why he's only 16% roster. But sooner or later, he's going to catch a bomb touchdown, and then everyone's going to be scrambling to get him. He does, again, has very few people to beat out to have a meaningful role in one of the best offenses in the NFL right now. Pat Mahomes, catch passes from him. That sounds pretty good. Jalin Hyatt, only 2% rostered, 75 yards, 2 catches. Boom, big play after big play, 42-yard reception, 33-yard reception there. And now in the last 2 games, he has 4 plays of 25 or more yards in the game. He had 2 catches of 25-plus yards just last week. He's in a list of like A.J. Brown and 3 other just huge names, Jamar Chase, to do that in a 2-week span. So ultimately, Jalin Hyatt having these glimpses of really, really solid play. He was a star in training camp this year. The really just brings a different element than any other receiver in terms of the bombs and all that good stuff. So Jalin Hyatt, at this point, leading the Giants in snaps this week. Only Waller had more targets than him this week. Yeah, I get Waller's the de facto number 1 receiver, but no other receiver has stepped up yet. And Jalin Hyatt's role continues to go up higher and higher and higher. By the week, he makes explosive play after explosive play. He's definitely the next man up, in my opinion, on this offense that seems like they might finally get their legs under him. Last couple names here that I wanted to mention, and I do want to just make sure to plug 2 over in the middle of this. I do a much more in-depth, in order, 10 to 1, top 10 guys on Tuesday, 7 p.m. I always have that waiver show. It's always a great time. Lots of great comments and interaction throughout it. So if you want a more in-depth show, set your calendar, 7 p.m. this Tuesday. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have during that as well. The other 2 names that I wanted to mention tonight, at least, though, Gardner Minshew, 8% rostered. As we talked about, 4 total touchdowns on the day. Ultimately, almost every single one of those came on broken plays. But hey, fantasy points are fantasy points. This offense moves at a very fast pace, and that's what creates these type of broken plays and these opportunities. Doing that against a good Browns defense certainly could have better days even more. So moving forward. And then last names on the Cardinals are Amari Demarado and then Trey McBride. These are at the bottom barrel. This is at the end of the list. But for those leagues that you're talking about, no one's ever available. What you talk about? Well, here we go. Everybody dropped Demarcado after Keontae Ingram was the guy, and he played more snaps and saw more carries, and then he wasn't heard of. Didn't have a single touch. I don't even know if he was active today, honestly, Keontae Ingram. Not sure what happened there, but he did not touch the ball at all. And meanwhile, Amari Demarado, 13 carries, 58 yards, 4 catches on 5 targets, 17 yards. Are those crazy stats? No, but only 1 attempt went to Damian Williams. No one else was used other than Josh Dobbs on mobile designed runs. I do know James Conner's due back in, I believe, 1 more week. So this is not a play you want to go and blow it all out for. But if you need a fill-in running back next week, it does seem like Amari Demarado has taken the reins back over. But this came out of nowhere, so who knows? Next week they might just completely throw a new game plan at us. So this is not a play to spend much, if any, fab. It's more so if he's lingering there and you have a desperation plug-in spot next week, you can do worse than that. I did want to toss out Trey McBride, the number 1 tight end prospect just a few classes ago. Continues to have these nice little flashes. He's been outplaying Ertz now for 2 straight weeks. 5 targets, 4 catches, and 62 yards for McBride 2 weeks ago versus 5 targets, 2 catches, and 22 yards for Ertz. Clearly was a win for McBride there. And then this week, not a huge day, but 6 targets, second on the team there. 3 catches, 29 yards compared to just 19 yards on 3 catches for Zach Ertz. And it's more so not that I think it's just going to be like he'll keep ascending over Ertz. It's more so I think Ertz is a big trade candidate. A veteran, savvy guy, win now team could look for Ertz, whereas it seems like McBride's right on this team that's trying to evaluate their youngsters. Is going to continue to get elevated and elevated. And I, again, think Ertz gets traded. And even if he doesn't, McBride has some talent, has some great after the catch ability. I'm intrigued to see what he continues to do moving forward.
Is McBride number 85?
Yes. It's like you think you have Zach Ertz catching the ball, and then it's the other guy.
No, I'm saying, did you see him hurdle that guy?
Yeah, he's a freak. Like he can do that type of stuff.
Yeah, well, that caught my eye. It was about the only thing in the Cardinals game that interested me. I was like,
I saw that one hurdle, and I opened up my Fab wallet and dumped it out. That's all I needed to see.
I was like, who's that guy? Right.
Who's that freak?
Right. Anyway, yeah, I'm into him.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.